All right, we got a lot to talk about here. Avowed, Obsidian, they are losing a big player at that studio. We have Doom, the Dark Ages, where that debate is going on right now as to whether this game has been a success yet, at least in its first week, based off of the Steam numbers versus the total amount of players that was actually just recently announced. We have more information about Bungie and Marathon, which again is not looking very good. There's a big Xbox sale. We have some Nintendo Switch 2 news in terms of who is manufacturing the chips within the Nintendo Switch 2. So lots of interesting stuff, that stuff plus other things. But before we do get into it, if you do enjoy daily news, gaming content, all the time, make sure to hit the subscribe button, help the channel grow, just helps get the video out there. Also hit the like if you did enjoy this video. And of course, at the end, let me know what you think about all the things that were talked about in this video in the comments below. But for now, let's jump into it. So we have some big news here coming out of Obsidian. As we know, Obsidian's most recent release has been Avowed. It was a game that was highly anticipated, and I think overall it was received very well, sitting at an 80 something, I believe, on Metacritic right now, or at least when it did come out with the initial reviews. Avowed has come, but it has gone. People have played it. Some people liked it, some people didn't. But Carrie Patel was the director behind Avowed, and she has now left Obsidian, going over to Netflix Games. She announced this herself, saying that she was joining Night School as a game director. She was previously at Obsidian for nearly 12 years, where she was a game director and the narrative co-lead and senior narrative designer, but now going to Night School, who's known for Oxenfree and Oxenfree 2, which I don't really know anything about those games. Currently, it's unknown the specific game that she is working on. But that is a big departure there. Somebody who did direct the most recent release here in Avowed, and as I said, was relatively received well. I don't think this really means anything in terms of how successful this game was. I think this is just somebody who's been at Obsidian for 12 years and wanting to go out and try something new at a new studio. Netflix Games came calling. She obviously accepted the offer that they did provide her. So it'll be interesting to see what she is working on. But going forward here for Obsidian, how will they have, because they have different teams they're working on multiple different games. I wonder who will be coming up here as the next game director to take over for her to work on whatever project they have in the works. Obsidian has been doing so many games. They release tons of stuff and all of them end up being pretty good. The next big one here is the Outer Worlds 2, which I'm very excited for because I loved the first one, and from what they have shown off so far for Outer Worlds 2 looks phenomenal. The update in the combat, the stealth, and the overall look of the game graphically and stuff. So it looks very, very good, and we're going to see a lot more on June 8th as it is the after show to the Xbox showcase. In terms of Avowed, I was very excited for this game before it did drop. It was one of my more anticipated games coming out from Xbox Game Studios. I enjoyed it, but it just didn't hit where I wanted it to hit. It was not my favorite game that I've played recently. I think overall, when it comes to it, I was expecting more of a deeper RPG experience and just in terms of choice and consequence and stuff, and it did not hit that for me. It was kind of more of an action game. So my expectations were different going into it than probably where they should have been, but I don't think Avowed did bad. So we'll see if there's any more news that does come out in the future as to why she left. But as of right now, it's just going over to Netflix Games to build something new. All right, Doom, the Dark Ages. This game just came out last week. I've been playing through it. I think it's fun. I think it's a great Doom. I like the slower gameplay of it, the more tanky feel. I love the shield and all that, especially for this point in my life where I feel like my reflexes are slower, and games like Doom Eternal, the fast paced of them, it makes it harder. But I think it's a great game, and I think it's going to be one of the biggest releases this year. At least that's what I had predicted, but it did not start off very, very well on Steam. And there's a lot of debate on just how successful is this game actually going to be, or has it ended up being a flop? A lot of people love to look at the Steam numbers whenever a game does release, but we are in a completely different landscape in video games in terms of how people can actually access them. And Steam numbers are important, but when you have things like subscription services, Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, and when you're looking at first party Xbox games, the fact that they are now everywhere, they're even on PlayStation, they're going to have sales numbers from pretty much everywhere. And that's going to determine the overall success of it. Also, the engagement of this game is going to be huge. So we have two different points of view here. It's the Steam database. We'll first take a look at how this game is doing on Steam. As of right now, in terms of the peak player count, it is the lowest of the trilogy. This is according to Steam database, has an all-time peak of 31,470, where Doom 2016 stands at 44,271. And then Doom Eternal just destroyed both of these in terms of peak player count, where it got 104,891. So clearly, Doom the Dark Ages on Steam is performing significantly worse in terms of the amount of people that purchased it there. One of the things here with the PC version of Doom the Dark Ages is that the requirements are pretty high. You need a ray tracing GPU, which obviously still a lot of people don't have that. And that's going to cut a lot of people out day one from buying it. I'm sure if they want to play it, once they upgrade their GPU, they will jump in and play. But I think that is one of the major reasons why people aren't playing it on Steam or haven't purchased it yet on PC. The other obviously major reason is that it's on PC Game Pass day one. And I think you'll have a lot of people signing up to Game Pass to play it who previously would have potentially bought it on Steam. But it being in Game Pass day one just in general is going to cannibalize some sales. But does that mean the game is a failure? I don't think so. I think there's so many different metrics that are looked at here for the success of it, that subscription, the amount of people who have signed up to Game Pass to play it, the amount of people that have played it on day one across the different platforms all play into this. Now, with that being said, initially, this information hadn't come out yet, and I assumed that they were going to announce something as soon as they had some sort of numbers, but it's actually come out faster than I expected. Doom has actually reached here 3 million players already, and it is the biggest launch in its history. They put this out around 4 p.m. yesterday, and they say, thank you for making Doom the Dark Ages the biggest launch in its history, 7 times faster to 3 million players than Doom Eternal. So clearly, the Steam database and the Steam peak player counts is nowhere even near the amount of people that are playing this game. 3 million players. And of course, this always brings up the discussion that it was with Assassin's Creed, this came up, and pretty much any game that happens where they announce players, you always have a lot of people think these numbers aren't either real or legitimate enough to determine whether a game is successful or not, thinking that when they announce players it's because the sales were low. I mean, we don't have that information, but 3 million players means that there are a lot of people jumping in. They've sold far more than 31,000 copies of this game. I can guarantee you that, whether that's on PlayStation, whether that's people buying it on Xbox, whether that's more people potentially buying it through the Xbox PC app. The game, as of what this is telling us, seemingly is successful at this point, and I feel like those numbers are going to continue to increase. So Doom the Dark Ages, the debate will still be there when you look at the peak Steam concurrent player numbers, and then when you look at the what Bethesda has announced here with 3 million players. But I look at this and I think this is success, and I think that Doom is doing very good. A lot of people are pumped up for it. It's a great game, and I'm sure it will be meeting the expectations that Xbox has set for them. Or Xbox is having another big sale here for critically acclaimed games. It is now live. There's just a lot of bargains here. I like to bring these up in case people don't know and then they end up missing them. But here are the sales. This is running until May 27th, and you're getting up to like 90% off some of the games here that you can see, like RoboCop, Rogue City, which is a game I still need to play. I do own it. You got Mass Effect Legendary Edition 90% off, Marvel's Midnight Suns 85% off. You have the Phantom Liberty DLC for Cyberpunk 2077. It's 25% off, but it is on sale. The BioShock The Collection, 80% off. So there's some great stuff here just to add to your backlog if that is not big enough yet for you. I know for me, my backlog is massive, but these sales always get me. These and the Steam sales generally do get me, where I go in there and find some good stuff like $7 games, $10 games. I will probably pick some of those up and just add them into my overall collection. All right, let's talk about this because this is hilarious, stupid, absurd, whatever, however you want to describe it. Randy Pitchford, again, outspoken, of course, comes out with another statement here that has gamers and the internet talking about the future of the pricing of video games and whether you should be able to afford $80 games. So, Borderlands 4, we do not know the price of it yet. I would basically bet at this point that it will be $80 based especially off of these statements that he is making. But Randy Pitchford has said that real fans will pay $80 for Borderlands 4 if that's the price of the game. And basically, he was commenting here on social media, replying to a fan. Or a fan had commented on Borderlands 4 saying, better not be $80 on a post. And then Randy Pitchford has said, if you're a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. My local game store had Starflight for Sega Genesis for $80 in 1991 when I was just out of high school working minimum wage at an ice cream parlor in Pismo Beach, and I found a way to make it happen. It's an absurd take because he's basically saying that you're not a real fan of the game, you're not a real Borderlands gamer if you don't want to pay $80 for it, or if you can't afford to pay $80 for the game. It's the same stupid arguments that we see pop up all the time in like the console wars side of things, where you see PlayStation people saying, look, I own my games. I spent all of this money while you Game Pass peasants are renting games on Game Pass. And it is just so stupid, especially in this day and age where even if you're buying your games, it's a digital license that can be taken away at any time. So technically, I guess we're all kind of renting our games, but it is very, very dumb when you bragging about paying and overpaying for things in this industry when the reality is these games don't need to be priced at these prices. The $80 price point for games right now is an excuse. They use inflation, they use all these things. Those are excuses to raise the prices. And as gamers, people going out and buying them is why they do it. And I feel like we've kind of already passed that line, unfortunately. And I don't think it's going to change. And I always like to make the reference of when you look at the yearly sports releases and the amount of people that do go out there and buy those at uh, $80, $70, whatever the prices were, when they first raised the prices from 60 to 70, and people went out and bought those every single year. They knew at that point that they could charge people these prices and people would still go out and buy them. Gamers would still go and get them. And I feel like we're at that point right now where games are going to go up to 80. They're still going to have lots of sales, and then it's going to signal that they can do these things with the prices. The reality is I don't see this changing right now, but we are also in a time in video games where you just don't need to actually spend $80. There's so many different avenues where you can get these games for cheaper, whether that's waiting a little bit for them to drop in price, because they always do, unless they're Nintendo first party games, they always drop in price relatively fast. You have launchers, you have those keys that you can buy that even at launch, they're cheaper. And then you have things like Game Pass where games are dropping day one and you don't need to actually go out and spend the $80 on them. So we'll see if Borderlands 4 ends up being $8, but his response here that only real fans would make it happen is so absurd. You're basically telling people that you're not a real fan unless you can afford the $80 and to just spend your money on this game rather than spending your money on things that are probably significantly more important than spending $80 on Borderlands on day one. They could be the biggest Borderlands fans in the world, but if they can't afford the $80, they should not be spending $80 on the game. They should be putting their money in things that are more important. I mean, I don't want to tell people to do with their money, but that's just kind of the way I see it. So labeling the real fans as people who are going to make it happen to me is absurd. And the other thing here is he is basically just saying we have to wait for the publisher to make the price. And I don't know, I feel like he could have some influence on the price of this thing. And finally, the comparison of game prices in 1991 to now, again, is a stupid comparison when you look at how much bigger the video game industry has become and how many more ways they can make money off of gamers with microtransactions. So the price comparisons that you always see of people saying, look, games were $80 in the 90s, so they should be even way more than that now, is, I don't know. I disagree with those comparisons completely, as the industry is making record profits and it's growing and it's exponential and it's mainstream now. Back in the 90s, gaming was not mainstream. But that's my rant on Randy Pitchford and his thoughts on the real fans. Now, Bungie, as we know, they're going through a lot of they're in a bad situation. It's almost like if Marathon comes out, which I am now leaning more to this game failing. I wasn't when it first was announced, but I feel like it's kind of shot itself in the foot, and I don't really see a way back right now for Marathon. If it fails, this could be the end of Bungie, and it will be again a huge loss here for PlayStation, who I think are regretting their purchase right now of Bungie. We have a bit more info here, and apparently, and again, this is just a claim. This is, I believe, from Paul Tassi, who is saying that Bungie's Marathon needs to break into top 5 NPD sales of the year to be considered a success. This is a report here from Paul Tassi sharing this claim in a new YouTube video, citing insider information about Bungie's internal expectations and the kind of commercial performance leadership is hoping to see. He says here, I've heard this needed to be in the top 5 of MPD sales for the year if it's going to be a success or considered a success. Crazy, no way, there's no way. And I mean, if this is true, I don't believe this will happen. That's just my prediction, especially after everything that has gone on with the whole plagiarism side with the art. But it basically is setting this game up to fail. There's a couple of things going against it. First of all, when they announced it and showed it off, the reception was very lukewarm. It was a lot of people just were like, okay, it's nothing that exciting. That alone, right off of the bat, is going to make this game not do as well as I think they expect. Then you have the whole controversy with the art and the plagiarism. But the biggest thing of all, I think that will stop this game from being very successful is Arc Raiders. Arc Raiders, that game looks very good. It's already getting a lot of hype online. It is an extraction shooter. It's going to be in direct competition here with Marathon. And I think a lot more people, especially with the recent happenings that have occurred, are going to lean more towards Arc Raiders rather than Marathon if they have to choose one. I don't know how they're going to end up in the top 5 MPD. It's a huge year. There's so many big games coming out in 2025 with just tons of great releases already. It will be very, very hard. And if it doesn't, what does that mean for Bungie? And how much more control is Sony going to have here over Bungie? Could we end up seeing the end of this studio? It'd be super sad to see. I don't want that to happen, but right now it is not looking good for Bungie and it is not looking good for Marathon. And in fact, when we talk about Arc Raiders here, it's already happening here that Marathon is kind of screwed. Arc Raiders has entered the top 10 most wishlisted games on all of Steam after the recent Marathon controversy, and this is a 3-player extraction shooter from Embark Studios. The game looks phenomenal too. The footage that has come out, game looks great, and it looks like a ton of fun, hilarious clips and everything. They have proximity chat, which is already something that is a big advantage over Marathon, which I don't know what they were thinking by not putting proximity chat in Marathon, but they didn't. So I don't know. It's going to be very, very tough. It is releasing later this year, so they're going to be going up against each other unless, of course, Marathon does get delayed, which at this point, it seems inevitable, but they so far are saying they're sticking to their guns on releasing the game in September. Right, the Nintendo Switch 2, the pre-orders have come and gone. The pre-orders are sold out, but I don't believe in any way the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be hard to get, even within the first year. I think even on day one, there's going to be inventory for people to walk into a store and pick these things up. I don't think Nintendo is playing around at all here with inventory. I don't think they're trying to make the Nintendo Switch 2 have this scarcity around it so that people get more excited to go and buy it. There's no chip shortages. So I think the Switch 2 is going to have plenty of inventory and have a lot of sales. And we have more info here that they are really ramping up and trying to make sure that they can build enough Nintendo Switch 2s, as they are reportedly using Samsung to build the main Switch 2 chip. So they say here that Nintendo hired Samsung to build the main chips for the Switch 2, including an 8nm processor custom designed by NVIDIA. And this would mark a move by Nintendo away from TSMC, which manufactured the chipset for the 2017 Switch. And NVIDIA had comments saying it doesn't disclose its suppliers, but Samsung and NVIDIA also declined to discuss the matter. Samsung has previously supplied Nintendo with flash memory and displays, but building the Switch 2's processor would be a rare win for the company's contract chip division. They say here that Samsung can reportedly build enough chips to allow Nintendo to ship 20 million or more Switch 2s by March of 2025. 6. And that is the big thing. The projected sales for the Switch 2 are 15 million units in the first year. So if they can ship up to 20 million, as I said, I feel like there will be not too many major issues here of trying to get a Switch 2 in the first year if you do want one. Even with the pre-orders right now sold out, I think there's been some grumblings that there's going to be some more pre-orders at some point, or they'll just pop up periodically. I've already seen some more pop up on who I follow. Maybe that's just people canceling their pre-orders, not sure, but I don't think the Switch 2 is going to be that hard to get. Even the Switch 1 I didn't find very hard to get. As I walked into a store, I hadn't pre-ordered it. I walked into a Walmart at like 7 or 8 a.m. on the day that it released, and they had plenty of stocks. I feel like it'll be very similar this year. If you're somebody who's sad you didn't get a pre-order, and I think you will end up being okay. All right, a couple of more things here to end it off. Stellar Blade is getting a sequel. This was quietly revealed here by the developer Shift Up. They do say this, that in their presentation from May 16th, this is the recent financials. On page 19, a chart shows scheduling plans for Goddess of Victory, Nikkei, another Shift Up title, and a potential future title labeled Project Witches for now, and Stellar Blade. So there will be more coming to this game. This game did very well, so that is not surprising. It's also coming to PC, which will help its overall success. And then Cyberpunk 2077, they are working on a sequel, and apparently it features a second city that feels like Chicago gone wrong. This is what the creator is saying. Mike Pondsmith suggesting the next game will feature multiple cities. Pondsmith here, the Cyberpunk creator, has said, "I'm not as involved directly, but I see scripts. Last week I was wandering around talking to different departments and seeing what they had. Like, this is the new cyberware. What do you think?" I spent a lot of time talking to one of the environment guys, and he was explaining how the new place, because there's another city that we visit, and I'm not telling you any more than that, but there's another city that we visit. Night City is still there. So seems like here the next Cyberpunk is going to have multiple cities, which just make this game even more expansive than it already is. And obviously it will be very cool to see when they eventually do announce that one. But I'm going to end the video there. If you did enjoy this video, hit that thumbs up. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Bye.